All right, for a big change-up now, we're getting into a mirror matchup that is full of Zerg. In the bottom right for Basilisk, he is Reynor. In the top left of Hard Lead, we do have Dark, who is now playing for Talon Esports, actually. Pretty sure I got that right. It was literally yesterday that it was announced, and I could have already forgotten. It's possible. Or 2 days ago, anyway. But yeah, Talon Esports. Pretty freaking cool signups happening in the StarCraft 2 sphere, and, well, general esports sphere, but particularly good for us, who aren't often on these big-name teams to even get the recognition from any amount of esport-wide coverage. StarCraft 2, for a lot of reasons, is very insular. But anyway, that aside, so we got a ZvZ. We do not get these very often, so I'm actually rather intrigued by them. They're definitely my weak point, if I'm being honest, as far as the analytics of them, and Zerg can just generally be kind of hard to call with their decisions. Based off that larva, good old larva mechanic. But I can tell you the history of these two players, the most recent history. And, well, I could tell you the actual score between the two, but that's not what I was getting at. The reason I'm watching this is not just to learn more about ZvZ, but also because the two great names and the fact that ZvZ doesn't happen that often. It's European versus Korean, which is always fun. But then, for me in particular, it's Reynor's question of whether or not he is good at ZvZ right now, basically. Just to be brutally honest, he has gone on a practice tear since Atlanta, where he had a very disappointing end to his tournament. I think he took it personally, and he's going to show up in Katowice. And one of the things he was also struggling with around that time, before Atlanta, where he was also sick, to be fair, but he was struggling in ZvZ. A lot of his matches versus Cyril, the other great Zerg of the European region, and other contender for, GOAT status, #1 in the world, was bopping Reynor. And Reynor had expressed in a, sort of joking way that he does, but nonetheless, I think there is some truth to it, that he just didn't like it. But on his practice tear since Atlanta, not only has he been practicing 1v6 Archon mode, Terran GMs, it seems like he's also been dominating ZvZ. He was talking about how he was on something like a 30 win streak in the top of the ladder, and then finally lost to, maybe Cyril, actually, I'm not sure, but he lost to finally a Zerg player. And he then went on another streak. So his ZvZ has been a focal point, and it's also really important to note this because there is a legitimate question as to whether or not Reynor disliked the matchup so much that he was going to race choose, which has really not been done in StarCraft 2. Basically not. And that means not choosing based on the whims of the day, but rather choosing your race based on a particular matchup. So he was, at times, choosing Protoss versus Zerg. Seems not to be the case anymore. I got some interesting openers, so I can't talk about this too often. Reynor did go for an earlier hatch pool, and then, didn't do anything aggressive with it, of course, but has gone for some metabolic boosts, which, that's normal, right? Well, yeah, it is normal, but Dark isn't going for it. Dark has gone for a lair super freaking quickly. Roachborn is coming down the front line, Evolution Chamber as well. Both players actually did stick on the 2-base style of ZvZ. Now, they both have very different intentions and very malicious intentions, actually hiding behind this wall to obscure their true plans, perhaps. There's actually no scouting going on, but they would. Because one player, is getting speed. When this 2-base build can sometimes be definitely more on the Roachborn coming down fast, which it's only just not coming down right now, right? So that could have been a surprise. If that was the plan, it's not. +1 Carapace is legitimately on the way, and he did grab a 3rd base. But that 2-base Ling all-in hidden behind the Roachborn, absolutely a thing. And then also hidden behind the Roachborn and the 2-base wall can be a fast Spire, which is essentially what Dark is doing. So Dark's going for that. Reynor kind of just moving over to a 3rd a little bit slower, but that is still the plan. +1 Carapace could be for an upcoming attack. But I'm not sure the timing's going to work out because this Spire was so freaking fast. A +1 Carapace attack to a Spire player actually sounds like it could be really scary, but I don't think the timing's going to work here. +1 melee on the way, something that Reynor cannot tell as he's the Wiggly Jiggly. He's going to trust that the Roachborn is producing the upgrade that will actually be used, but as far as that being +1 missile or not, can't actually tell. Trying to read into things with very, very limited information. Overlords can't get that close, lest they be defeated by the queens. Dark also with very limited scouting at least knows that his opponent went for a third. He had intentions of going to a third faster, but he actually saw a drone move out and then go, nope, nope, nope. As it saw the lings come across the map. That is a +1 Carapace upgrade almost finishing and a lot of army units being created, so that attack is absolutely underway, but the mutas are already out, and this is the factor that I'm not sure is going to lead to Reynor's success. It still might. Reynor's going to have a lot of units that have an extra armor against these flappy little things in the air that don't shoot particularly strongly. So this could work out, especially as Reynor even bypasses the scouting right now. He sees with the Xel'Naga, there's nothing scouting for this Ling run by, so that could be very effective. Dark is putting all of his resources into mutas, and then a little bit into Lings that do not have speed yet. He realizes what's going on as the full might of the Zerg army of Reynor comes across the map, but these mutas weren't even on top of the army to even try and get some preemptive damage. They are only just now getting on top of the army, which is a little less effective. And only 8 of them, again, trying to battle against the naturally high carapace of the roaches and the additional carapace with the upgrade. It's going to take a little while. Those Lings were at least stopped from getting into the natural. Dark with some great last-second management. Spine Crawlers are on the way as well as he realizes the severity of the situation. But there they go. The Lings are in the natural, surrounding the roaches. And the mutas now have to go chasing the Lings, which is an awfully obnoxious thing to be doing right now. Dark wants more actual units on the ground helping. He wants the drones to consolidate. And he wants those Lings to finally get off his back. He can really establish the wall and reestablish his third, because that is what the Lings ended up going for once they were denied into the main base. That Spire is going to stay alive, no problems there, and now the question is, after the dust clears, was that enough damage for Reynor? He managed to get so much of his army across the map without being harassed by the mutas, which made that look a lot more effective. But at the end of the day, he did mostly just grab that third hatchery. Second evolution chamber was not necessary. And he didn't actually kill that many drones, but of course he did have a lot more drones to begin with, or rather as he started to just, see that the attack wasn't going to work anymore. He droned up way harder than Dark did, so a 21 worker difference that Reynor is actually saturating his third base with, because that's alive. That's a pretty big lead, and the only question is, do the mutas get out of control? The mutas can get out of control, and they are continuing to be pumped into. This is very much dedicating to a Muta-Ling style. But Reynor has already deflected kind of the first wave of mutas on his side of the map. There was really no threat to being found out without enough spores or enough queens, because those roaches and lings bought time. And so he's able to get the setup defensively with mostly set of defense. Queens great with transfuses, but the spores are really what cuts it. And then we go into an infestation pit pretty quickly. Reynor also choosing to continue with his own Ling production, has +1 melee also on the way, and a Baneling Nest. A lot of the times you'd see the non-muta player turtle up on roaches, possibly first into infestors, possibly into hydras, and then lurkers, and that might be the ultimate goal, but it's a little weirder now that they both are going into pure Ling. Mutas take on a spore crawl, at least they tried to, but a couple of transfuses really made that a lot more effective. 16 mutas now still combating a spore crawler too, are not going to be able to overpower. Dark was hoping the combined efforts of his ground and air army would have overwhelmed, but the queens were all stacked together, surrounding each other. They had a lot of transfuses, and a couple of backup spores really made the mutas a little less effective. And the transfuses on that spore, I think, literally caused 2 more mutas to fall than they should have. So that didn't work out, and that was kind of all in. I mean, Dark did not choose to go for more drones or a third base. He's only just now adding on a third base. He chose to produce nothing but Lings and try and catch Reynor off guard. But Reynor, he was kind of at least expecting the possibility. He had not created any Banelings, which would have really helped out there, but he did have his own Lings, and most importantly, those queens. Now, Reynor's own Lings, with their 1-1 upgrades, they are superior to Dark's Lings. Go for the third base cancel, or was that another kill? That was a kill, actually. Reynor just carefree back at home, goes for a 4th hatch, has infestors on the way. Hive as well, could eventually out on Vipers for Parasitic Bomb, and then that really means there's no chance for Dark to get a little kind of cheesy Muta victory. Because Mutas can be really annoying. You don't defend one base properly enough, suddenly that goes down, and then trying to get that base up and running again is even more difficult because the creep spread isn't over there, the spores have to be replaced, the queens have fallen, whatever it is. You're a little more delayed to your infestors, maybe they're not out in time, and then maybe you also are so focused on getting technology you don't have your own ground army, and then Dark overwhelms you. There's so many ways to get a really stupidly lost game against Mutas. I'll put it that way. Obviously, these plays are very good and that's stupid, but it just feels stupid when you lose against Mutas sometimes. And that could happen, but at this point, I think Reynor is not going to let that happen. Fungals on top of the Banelings, which are slow anyway. Which, I mean, they did help. It's just like, it's just... The Mutas are usually what you're looking for, the Fungal, but the Ling Baneling not able to connect with all of these queens. Not that they would have been the most cost-efficient, but still would have been another thing to worry about. Didn't. The Mutas killed 12 drones, but that was hardly enough to make up for everything that has happened in this game. And Dark was about to be linged in his natural. Lings were breaking down his wall. So Reynor, with the game 1 victory, goes for that Carapace attack, and it ends up being effective enough. I mean, the third base going down, and then the safety back at home due to the time it took to clean that all up, and making sure he didn't get bopped by kind of a surprise all-in. Very nice play from Reynor. And Dark is going to have to try something a little bit different. Fortunately, ZvZ is full of different builds. Let's get into game 2. Game number 2 is going to be on Golden Aura. In the top left, it is Reynor. Bottom right, we have Dark. Again, on Talon Esports now. Big names coming into StarCraft 2. Thankfully, when they were not going into StarCraft 2, we had really awesome names like Basilisk. Picking up some top-tier players, supporting them to a great degree, and also producing tournaments and all that good stuff. So Reynor did a attack. You know, clearly it wasn't all in. Or if it was, it did certainly enough damage. And that is the extra difficult thing about ZvZ, is to determine exactly where you are in the state of the game. For Reynor, I think it was quite clear where he was once he took 0 damage to the Muta counterattack. Like, he very successfully cleared all the check marks that you need, no space left undefended, enough queens with transfuses as well to make sure that they wouldn't get bodied by a potential kind of all-in from Dark as well, putting all of his resources into battle units, not into economy. Had he had those queens a little more apart, maybe he had like 5 and 5, trying to make sure the Mutas didn't get any harassment. Had he just been carefree with them, or thought the Spore Crawlers would cover all of his defenses, there's a chance that Dark, with his own Lings getting us around on those queens, combined with the Mutas, would have been enough, despite the Spores. But not to be the case. So, a little back and forth, but I'm pretty sure Reynor figured he was good after the Mutas' first attempt on his side of the map were very ineffective. And I like to say that gives you some type of read into the opponent, but I don't know if that's actually true. I mean, generally, when you're talking about ZvZ between Europeans and Koreans are going to be more aggressive. But I mean, I feel like that's such an old way of taking the matchup. Yeah, at one point, there was, I think, a lot more just really boring Roach vs. Roach games. They had those little intricate little details that were cool if you could figure them out and why someone was a little farther ahead, but sometimes they got pretty boring. And then Europeans were so much more often the ones to really be pushing that, I suppose, playing a nice defensive macro-oriented style. But I don't know, that was years ago. Years and years ago. And ZvZ has really become such a question mark, rare, aggressive, almost coin-flippy matchup. It always had its cheeses. It always had its, what do they say, a knife fight in a phone booth, Ling Baneling attacks. But at some point, I want to say 2 years ago, you had suddenly the realization, I guess, from everyone, community, pros, casters, whatever, obviously the pros got there a little faster, that it was also just one of the least played matchups. So people didn't want to play with each other, because as soon as they played against each other in an actual tournament, then they would know each other's styles. And then you had some of the eras where it felt like Lambo and a laser were just on the forefront of the strategic conversation on it, and then not so much nowadays. And then you have that still kind of being the case of just it being so not played, with so many options of openers, that it feels like a crapshoot even for the players. And I think that's one of the reasons that Reynor has said he doesn't really like it. But obviously, there are ways to try and foolproof your defenses and foolproof your ZvZ. As Brood War was also considered very coin flippy until Jadon came around, and that's an even that's a way stupider matchup in Brute War. ZvZ is just... Yeah. Anyway. And it seems like Reynor is more and more confident as the days go by in the matchup. But between two players of this caliber, I can't say that Reynor's because he wins one game. You know, he looked stronger necessarily. Really lined up with the builds. So we have Reynor now going for the 2 base. Dark actually did reach out to a 3rd base much faster. So it looks more similar to the first game from Reynor, but he has different plans because he's not going for a Carapace. He did go for the Roachborn at around the same time. There really is that solid 2-base setup, but then he has a sneaky, sneaky Baneling Nest on the back. And that changes up things a little bit here. So if you're looking at this and you're expecting a pure Roach army, maybe some Speedlings, but then suddenly Banelings also appear and ends up still being some type of all-in. I mean, that could have been the thorn in the side. But it looks like the Banelings for right now, I mean, aren't even really threatening Dark so much as Dark, even though he did go for Pure Ling and skip the Baneling Nest, has transitioned over into the Roaches certainly fast enough. So, had Reynor done the exact same thing, that would not have been out of the question, right? To just totally skip the Baneling Nest. But in this case, Reynor's kind of almost sneaky Baneling Nest on the back has not really helped him break through Dark's defenses, as Dark has a Spine Crawler and a handful of Roaches. So, Dark... actually building quite a few Roaches. His droning definitely stopped short of Reynor's. That 3rd hatch, not going to get any drones on anytime soon, unless to fake. And the drones could actually transfer over to try and convince Reynor that nothing's going weird here, but that is a lot of Roaches for Dark. Reynor actually thinking that he can add on a couple of more drones. Might be incorrect about that. He will have his own +1 missile. He will have a lair. He will have a superior economy. If he survives, Dark's upcoming all-in. That is the big question. Can he survive? Reynor denied entry into that 3rd base or natural to really get a lot of scouting. Can't tell that the drone count is so low. And might have even taken that Spine Crawler as the sign that he's going to play a little more defensive, but that was only for a certain amount of time. Overseer tried to get into the main base, but was denied as well. It seems like the army moving out, though, has told Reynor exactly what's going down, and he is ASAP trying to make an emergency defense. Some Roaches are out, but more are needed. Baneling's going to try and come in to help out. They can wash off Dark's Ling reinforcements and maybe actually get a solid connection with the Roaches as well. Queen's pull to the front, a couple of transfuses available, but the Roach number is certainly favoring Dark right now. Baneling's colliding with Dark's Ling run by, and now coming on to the main engagement as well. Going to try and get the best possible hits, and they will add a lot of splash damage, and it looks like Dark has chosen the wrong engagement. The number of Roaches thinning out significantly even before Reynor has to rely on his Spine Crawlers, which he does bring forward, so they miss a couple of attacks, but with more reinforcements, Defender's advantage kicking in, Reynor has absolutely held this all in, and Dark is in a lot of trouble. His lair only just begun. His drones actually still, after 9 being produced here, not going to match Reynor's. And now he also might have a problem of a counterattack that he has to consider, further denying him access to the droning that he so much needs. +2 missile starts up for Reynor. He is going to go back into his own droning, not going to turn this into a full attack on the counter, but he still has a slight arm supply lead that he can try and at least do something with. Again, that something could be just forcing Dark to make more Roaches. Stop him from droning. And the balance of ZvZ continues. Oh, Reynor, I actually am so surprised. He built 2 Spine Crawlers, didn't even really need them. They did end up helping a little bit towards the very tail end, but with his, larva, his eggs popping, I don't even think that's true. That was a not great ramp to run up. I mean, I could totally see Dark's intentions. If he had gotten, I think, a little more on top of the Roaches, that might have been more effective. If his Ling run by had actually gotten into the natural, it's such a chaotic circumstance. And then the Banelings don't do as much splash damage on here as well. But it just turns sour very quickly. And Reynor has a significant lead. He's also getting some Overseer contamination into the field, although I'm not sure an upgrade actually had started. Couldn't start, so. Point is that +2 attack is guaranteed to be much faster. But Reynor's going to try and hit without it. Doesn't have any Ravagers as of yet either. Some are being built. More drones are on the way. I think he is just posturing, realizing that he has the opportunity to do so. He has Roach speed. His opponent does not. And even if his opponent did, actually pushing into Reynor is another thing entirely than just defending. And Reynor can continue poking and prodding now with his superior Ravager count while waiting for the superior upgrades. Or just win the game right here. Dark just not having as many units right now. Down to Ravagers, down in Roaches, even down the Queens at this point. 2 Spine Crawlers are trying to help out, and they're very effective in the Roach v Roach battles, but perhaps not effective enough, especially as that +2 is continuing to tick on down. Reynor's going to have more reinforcements, and it's actually just overwhelmed. So he didn't even need reinforcements yet again on the defense or on the offense. Reynor kicking butt here. Dark's attacks, Dark's trickiness, not catching him off guard. In the bottom left of Hecate, it is Basilisk Reynor. That's top right, Talon Esports Dark. And Reynor is going to try an easy peasy lemon squeezy 3-0 Dark in some of the faster ZvZ fashion. One tricky build from Dark that was ineffective, led to a fairly fast game. Then Dark's all in, backfired, led to a fairly fast game. And now Reynor is the one that's going to finally attack first. Oh, well, actually he did attack first in the first game, but you know what I'm saying. He's going to attack way in advance of any of Dark's intention, as Reynor has gone for a 12 pull. It does look to be one in which he does just add on the hatchery and looks to do maximum damage to Dark. Maximum damage would be actually killing Dark's hatchery, which would be fantastic, but then more realistic damage is often the drone kills, as Dark has to pull drones to save his hatchery. No sneaky drone out in the map, no gas to add onto a bandling nest. So, one of the less committed ways, I suppose, but the more popular opener for the professionals, certainly. And Dark will not know about this for some time. Lings can kind of go to the north of the Overlord and not lose too much time for the sake of the surprise. And Dark, obviously, no matter what happens, has to be waiting for his own Lings and Queens. You basically want to time this out perfectly so that the drones get pulled to buy time, but then they can actually be added into the Lings popping and the Queens popping. The Lings did not bother to hide, by the way. They're going the most direct route possible, which is totally fine, because either way, again, Dark's going to have to wait a little while, do a little micro on the drones. I do like that he checks around to see exactly what's going up on the front, but yeah, here's the dance. Here's the dance. If Reynor gets more than 3 drones, Dark is in some serious trouble. Dark should not be letting this hatchery go. But there is perhaps even a bit of ping problems. I mean, both players playing off server once again, probably on North America West or something. That hatchery is getting awfully low. The Lings of Dark are about to spawn, but most of them from the main base, of course. And those Queens still only halfway done. The drones are very injured, but so far alive. But that could change very quickly as Reynor has a couple more Lings joining in. We also are now in the weird position of that hatchery S actually being able to be focus fired. And Reynor realizes that he's going to go for it. And he is going to be able to escape with some Lings. In fact, a lot of Lings. The broodlings didn't actually end up catching those Lings in any type of surround, so Dark loses the hatchery, and that was probably the worst case scenario. I've certainly seen ZvZs in which the defender does come back from such a problem, but it's difficult to do, especially when there's not too much else that you work with, right? If you had been mining gas the entire time and then had realized it's going to go down, so you invest into speed, maybe you could try and make some type of speedling all-in happen, but yeah, Reynor has done more than expected, actually, by being able to kill that hatchery. Yeah, I mean, Dark was doing great keeping his drones alive, but Reynor had gotten too many bites, I guess? Claws? I'm not sure what they were doing to the hatchery. And realized he could take it down. That is unfortunate. Well, Dark is going to go ahead and try and get a third hatch up and running ASAP. Reynor has not gone for particularly fast gas, of course, with this opener, so that speed won't be coming into effect anytime soon. Not that a slow Ling all-in wouldn't be still kind of scary for Dark. He also doesn't have speed, right? And then it'll also be a matter of just who has more Lings, but they both end up starting up speed at rather similar timing. Dark actually won't be able to put drones on that third hatch anytime soon, but he might actually be able to use a larva from it at the very least. A little bit of scouting has to go down and see exactly what is happening. I mean, Reynor seeing the third has a pretty good grasp of the intentions That is to say, it's clearly not going to be a 2-base protective wall with the Roach or an Evolution Chamber and who knows what from behind it. Most likely with that, it is going to be Dark going for speed. Not that he's actually gotten into the main to see the spawning pool wiggly jiggly. Reynor is adding on his own Baneling Nest, and as long as they continue to make similar amounts of units, attacking units, then Reynor will 100% be in the lead. I mean, Dark got this third hatch, but it is only going to be used for the larva. Dark is planning to go for a very aggressive attack, trying to hide his lings, even kind of hiding his Baneling Nest in the very far back. Reynor is going to, looks like, be totally on top of this. He is already building more lings. His Baneling Nest is going to finish. His speed is going to finish. And he doesn't really need the third hatch either, because that would have been the one thing that Dark would have gotten a successful kill on, if Reynor was so bold as to grab it. Reynor actually was trying to wall there, but, I don't know if he intentionally let those through or not. Doesn't really matter, because either way, he has enough defenses with his own Banelings also ready to go, and Dark is just simply SOL. This is dunzo. I mean, Dark's going to try and drone, but woof. His zig when many other Zergs would zag has not caught Reynor off guard in any of these games. Now, the funny thing is that, again, between these two quality players, if they do play again later down the line, because this is the upper bracket, or they play in Katowice this upcoming week, I could easily see this going the opposite way, just in the nature of the matchup, but today, Reynor absolutely has Dark's number. And this is a almost comically large lead. 25 plus, no, 25 plus. He's got a 18 worker lead. Just to know that I can show that I can actually do math. And that is not a situation in which it's like 80, 62 or something. I don't know. It's not. That's just, it's so freaking early on. Ling Baneling, I mean, it can definitely get some run-bys in, but the amount of time that Reynor has had to be in this drone lead means that even if Darks somehow gets the best attack possible, which he's trying to do to get Banelings into that natural, even if you were to kill 15 workers right now and match up the worker count, it still wouldn't be enough, probably. Reynor has so much more invested into. He's actually got quite a big bank because he didn't have a third hatch, but that's finally finishing up too. And he's going to go into something that's a little less larva intensive anyway, which is roaches. And as the third hatch gets up and injects go on, he'll be able to reinforce with lings with this attack that we see him building up to. Quadrupling the army supply almost. Dark is in a ton of trouble. I mean, again, almost uncomparable amount of trouble. He's finishing his Roach Warren and getting his gases as the roaches and lings of Reynor do appear on his side of the map. Reynor is not going to do any boneheaded maneuver to let this game or this series go. It is looking like another 3-0 here in the upper bracket quarterfinals of the Masters Coliseum. Reynor is just out for blood after the disappointing Atlanta performance. Dark certainly still has something to prove, but I think more so in perhaps this upcoming Katowice, as he is retiring this year. Seems to be the consensus, but not going to be arriving in the finals of the Coliseum, at least not through the upper bracket. He's got a second chance down in the lower. We'll see what happens there, but Reynor really, really good today. Is going to move on to face the winner of our next cast, actually, which is going to be Max Pax versus Heroes. So see you guys there.